design thinking, right? It's a solutions development tool. This has been brought together by Imbarino and Nzuko Labs. Please, I want us to hold this frame in our head because I may make reference to this frame at some point. So what is design? I'll need somebody to just, like 3 persons, please, define what do you understand by design? Can I unmute your mic and answer?
Hi, Chuma. Do I need to put my camera on now?
Yeah, well, just so that people will know who is talking. I mean, you can just see your nice face.
Hi guys. This is Nkem on the line. So I kind of understand design to be a way or an art or a form of how things are put together, either in a structured or unstructured manner. Thanks.
Okay, that's correct. Who else is going? Come on. Don't worry, there's no wrong or right answers. You can just have a try. I need 2 more persons to have a try. Or maybe I should select. Okay, I'm going to do a random selection. Who is Hadassah? Is it he or she? Can you hear us? Can you all hear me?
Yep, I'll go instead.
Okay.
So,
Amia.
my understanding of design is kind of how things are presented or planned, kind of put together for the functionality and appearance of something. So how it will function, how it's supposed to work, and then eventually how it will look as well.
Fantastic. Okay. I think we'll just go ahead. So what is design? So you see that you are all correct. Design is a plan, is a framework. It's a commercial activity. I'll stress on that. It is a commercial activity because if it's not commercial, then it's not design. You're doing art, right? It is a process where the outcome is planned rather than by chance. So you're responding to something, an issue, a concept, right? There's something that leads you to design. There's always a reason to design. Design is a roadmap. It's very strategic, and the outcomes are unique and planned, right? Design is what we do every day. This is my favorite part, right? So everybody that came here today planned what they would do. You chose what you wear. You had to make sure you had your data, you set up your space. You set aside time to be here and all of that. All those activities, those steps you took is what design is, right? So design is what we do every day. So professionally, and I'll just read this out, and I'd want us to, again, keep it in. A designer is a business professional who develops solutions to commercial needs that require the balancing of technical, commercial, human, and aesthetic or emotional requirements. A designer can be said to be the engineer, that's the planner, a technician, hands-on, the maker, and an artist, somebody that intuits. A designer plans things for production, manufacture, construction, or deployment. The difference between the designer and the craftsperson or artist is that the designers usually develop things that have requirements set by others. and will ultimately be produced, manufactured, constructed, or deployed by others. I would like to elaborate more on this because I've been in scenarios and instances where people confuse designer and the artist. On the primary level, the designer and the artist share the same skill sets: illustration, observation, intuition, technical skills, and all of that. But the intent of what they are doing is what makes the difference now. So the artist is doing self-expression. I have a dream. I saw something my ancestors told me in the dream, and I wake up and I set up my canvas, I stretch my canvas, and then I start painting. That is art, right? But the designer responds to an issue in society or an issue in life. So I'm walking down the stairs in my house and I realize that it's a bit slippery. So what do? I'm not going to exactly bring down those stairs and start rebuilding it. So I look for a rubber that I can put at the edges, probably yellow colored rubber, so that I can see it. So I know how to take my steps. I can see them. I've responded to an issue. I think that's a fundamental difference, but you get to find overlaps at the end of the day. So simply put, the designer is a planner. The moment you start doing this as a business professional, that's when you are referred to as a designer. But it does not mean that anybody that does this on their own is not embarking on the act of designing, right? So coming to the professional established design disciplines, these are some of them. I did this some time back. Some of them have been, there's a lot more that have become established, but this gives you a snapshot. So it goes as far as from architecture to automobile, fashion, engineering, landscape architecture, sound design, one of my favorite design disciplines, systems design, transition design, urban design, user experience design, web digital design is life. Yeah. There are some emerging design disciplines. Like I said, some of these have now become established, right? So the designer coder in today's online world, that everything is now digital, or everything is being forced to go digital for obvious reality, the app-based economy, there is becoming a need for people that can write code and illustrate. I don't want to use the word design. People that can write codes and illustrate. Before now, those skill sets were separated, but it's becoming joined together. There's the design entrepreneur. That's me, right? People that use design to set up enterprises that solves problems. It's becoming a discipline on its own. There's the hybrid design researcher. So the first stage of design is research, and you need research. You really don't do anything without research. And research here means observation, right? There are several ways of doing research. We'll get to that part later. And then there's the business designer, people that plans businesses. And so social innovator as well, which I believe most of us are going to be doing after this session. We are going to become social innovators. Are we all together? I need to be sure that we are all following. So just say hi.
Hi, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Hi.
Feel free to interrupt me. Like I said, I like to be interrupted. Yeah. So I'm going to play a video that basically shows us what design thinking is in a nutshell. And I'd like us to pay attention. It's a bit of a comedy, but it's fine. It just drives the message home. Then after this, we'll then go through the steps of design thinking. Yeah.
So welcome to Phil, everybody. Today we're going to start in the step of empathy, which is the first step in our design thinking process. Empathy is the first step of the design thinking process. It is going out and experiencing what your end user experiences with your end user. Yeah. So empathy is experiencing what our end users experience. We want to walk a mile in their shoes, and if we can do this, we can find spoken and unspoken needs.
Empathy could look something like this. Hold up, Doc. Experience what your end user experiences. Ow. Like this. That was a lot harder than I thought. More like this. Are you gonna drink that? Man? Oh, that is so unpleasant. How do you do that every day? They're really gonna make that easier to take. This is also what empathy could look like.
Who are you talking to?
That's empathy. If you go out and really listen to your end user, you will learn. And when you learn, you can create better solutions based off that knowledge. This is what's key here at the Innovation Lab. So, listen well, and your solutions will rock. Woo! Yeah, empathy.
That's what I said. All right, folks, welcome back to Phil. Welcome back from your empathy safari. After empathy, we go to reframe. So on your empathy quest that you had, were there any new insights? Were there any surprising new learnings that you could take?
And this is what we do after we gather the empathy. We reframe. After we've really listened to our end user, after we've walked a mile in their shoes, this is the time where we can really figure out if we're solving the right challenge. For example, so here we are at a train station, and we're taking on the challenge. How might we keep people from missing their trains? Now, we assume that people are missing their trains because they're running late. But after talking to people and observing the environment, aka empathy, we learned that people were dealing with a long and strenuous ticketing process. So let's reframe the challenge from people missing their trains out of habit to how might we streamline the long and strenuous ticketing process, therefore people will make their trains. That is what we call reframe. So, okay, yes. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. That's right. Ow. It's called reframing.
Okay, welcome back, folks. Are you guys ready to move on in this process? Oh, wow, perfect. Okay, last time we looked at our insights that we got from empathy, and we were able to reframe our challenge to meet those specific needs. So the next stage in our process is
Brainstorming.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, brainstorming. Brainstorming is the next step in the design thinking process. This is a time when
This is a time for rapid fire, wild and crazy ideas. We're talking quantity of ideas over quality. We'll get to quality later. Quantity.
That's it. He's not wrong. He's annoying. He is annoying.
I'm not annoying.
So, the point is, yes, we're looking for those wild and crazy ideas. But remember,
To suspend judgment. No idea is a bad idea, especially when you've listened and experienced what your end user experiences. Remember, the best ideas come from your end user's needs.
Yes. So Richard has covered all of it. Let's just start. Let's start. Let's ideate. Let's just do it. Why don't we come up here? Let's just start brainstorming. Just write it on this. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Alrighty, folks. You are now ready for the next step in our design thinking process, which is prototyping. Prototyping is taking your ideas, your brainstorms, and making them tangible and visible. Think show, don't tell.
You're making a low-res version of your idea. You're making a low-res version of your idea. Ow! As I was saying, you want to create a visual representation of your idea using simple and cheap materials. That way, your end user can interact and give you feedback on your prototype, aka your idea.
Yes, begin. Begin.
So now we're at the testing stage. How do you know if your idea is going to work? You simply bring your prototypes to your end users and let them give you feedback. Take the feedback and improve your prototype.
So what do you guys think? It's not bad.
Right, but have you thought about trying it in red? That might work.
Come on, guys, we got work to do.
Come on, guys. Now, what do you think?
We love it.
And that's the great thing about the design thinking process. Whenever we get feedback, we simply take the prototype and tweak it. And that is it. That is all. Those are all the stages of the design thinking process. We hope you learned something today. If you're ever interested and inspired to experience this place yourself, come on down to the Florida Hospital Innovation Lab or check us out on social media.
Okay. Are we all here? I need to hear.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who saw something new? What they've not done before or what they don't know? Anyone? No one. Is it network? Do we have network problem?
No, not really. Okay, so I think that willingness to quickly change the color. When the end user says, "Oh, I like red," and they had it and they quickly got to work. You know, most of us would rather like to keep to what we've done. You know, and say, try and see the color, try and see the advantage of green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's correct. That's correct. Artists tend to do that a lot, but when you transit from being a core artist to a designer, you learn to let go of what you want to do, which is self-expression, like I noted before, to what the end user needs. That end user can be you, or can be the person, or a community, or a people, or a government, or a client you're designing for. So yes, you're very correct. And I'm glad you've learned that today. So design thinking is a mindset, it's a philosophy, right? It's that philosophy that says that every human being can be a part of making something better, right? I look at the way we live in our homes, right? Do we even interrogate how the home front is structured? So you come into a house, there's a parlor, and there's a kitchen, and there's a room, right? You do realize that the part of the house that gets the worst treatment is the kitchen. I stand to be corrected. This same place happens to be where we cook the food we eat. It's a bit of a worry. I don't know if any other person, if in your own house, in my own house, the kitchen is used to, be the space within the house that gets the least attention. You clean your parlor, you do furniture, furnishing, and all of that. But when you go into the kitchen, there's just something wrong. After the kitchen, you have the bedroom. The bedroom is usually very, very unkept. So I'm saying that when you start interrogating everything about you, right? What you wear, what you espouse, what you talk about, the things you respond to, the things you identify with, the space you live in. Somebody asked me, when you come into an Igbo man's house, how do you know it's an Igbo man's house? I don't know if anybody has an answer to that question. Remove the Igbo, put your own ethnic group. When I come into the house of somebody from Akwa Ibom, how do you know it's an Akwa Ibom man's house? Does anybody have an answer to that? Sorry, I didn't hear that. Somebody was saying something. Okay, who has been to a Chinese person's house or an Indian person's house?
Is it the decoration that they use in the home? It's the way they kind of place things around the house, and use kind of decorations for.
So that tells you that gives it some identity, right?
Yeah.
So you see that is intentional. It didn't just happen, right? Our northern brothers, when you come into their homes, you will know. But do you think the same thing happens in southern Nigeria? If you come into a typical, I'm using Igbo, right? Because I am Igbo. If you come into an average Igbo man's house, do you get the sense that you're a space that is an Igbo man's house? Without you knowing the person, their name, or hear them speak, you just come into a house. Is there anything that tells you that this is an Igbo man's house?
I think one of the things you notice is there is always there's a religious sticker on the door. So if there's any denomination, he has a sticker on the door. The next thing is there is always one event he attends with his wife. You always see the big picture on the wall. It's standard.
Wow, I didn't think of that. But now that you've said it, yes, I can relate. Yeah, we all have this. 2020 is going to be my year of breakthrough, right? All those stickers in front of your house. Yes. So the where I'm driving at, it all has to do with a mindset. It all has to do with a mindset. It all has to do with a mindset. We've been having a mindset in Nigeria that anything goes, right? And the politicians and security operatives and pretty much everyone in Nigeria has just done just about anything they want to do, and anything goes. But of late, there's been some social re-engineering that went on with the protests that happened. People are now asking questions, right? So a mindset has been born. I'm using that as a classical example of transforming and now owning a mindset of wanting to always make things better. That is what makes you a design thinker. Remember, a design thinker, design thinking, the way designers think. It's about always having a mindset of making things better, and it starts from our homes. It's about human beings, right? You're designing for human beings. Yes, there's been activity-centered design. I do more of ethnic-centered design. I try to use that word ethnic-centered because ethnic for me means indigenous to me. So what works for me, right? What works for me, what works for my audience. My audience is now the me that I'm working for. So what is ethnic to them? How would it make my life better? Again, it's always about making things better. A very good point. And this is also a differentiator from art. Yes, you have
Chuma, sorry, are you sharing your screen, your slides or something? Because we can't see.
Yes, can you all see my screen?
No, I can't.
I can see the screen.
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So,
I was looking at a different.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. Yeah.
Phone.
Okay. I can go ahead, right?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the hallmarks of design thinking is that it has to be a collaborative effort between the designer, everybody's a designer, between the designer, and the community, right? Everybody that experiences this issue, this problem, has to be part of it. So for instance, if you want to solve the problem of thugs at Opiweka in Onisha, and you don't involve those thugs, you're wasting your time. I'll bring it to Lagos. If you want to solve the problem of traffic in Lagos and you're not involving the police, the drivers, the yellow bus drivers, the yellow cab drivers, the average commuter on the road daily, the Okada riders, so basically everybody that is a stakeholder when it comes to traffic and movement in Lagos somehow has to be represented. And the reason why you do this is so that you get to feel the pulse. Everybody has their own understanding of the problem. And by the time you put all of them together, you begin to see a pattern and a solution emerge. It's magical, it happens. We just did something recently on health, innovating within the public health sector. And what we came up with was something called Lafia. Lafia is a platform of, Lafia means goodwill, good health, something like that. And it's a platform where people can share their health experiences, share the health facilities that they know about. Tochi, you want to say something? Tochi?
No, nothing.
Okay. Yeah, so the outcome is usually very magical. You don't plan it, but you know, you have an idea of what you want to achieve because you already know what you're trying to solve. And by the time you find that, which is that works, it always works because everybody was part of creating it. So it's collaborative, it's optimistic, it's a lot of instinct going on. So no matter how big your problem is or how little time there is, whatever budget there's available, its design is an enjoyable process. And I'm sure by the time we come live on ground, we'll start seeing that it's very experimental. I mean, you're giving birth to everything new. Let me state here that design thinking is the way products have continually been evolved. So, and it's become an integral part of product development, right? So, if you see the first airplane that was built by the Wright brothers, can we all hear me? Can we all hear me?
Yep, I could hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
I need us to confirm so that I
Yes,
know I'm talking to myself. Sorry, I'm not very good on using Zoom. I'm a very traditional person. I'd have loved to be seeing your faces, but unfortunately, you guys are denying me that privilege. But that's, yeah. That's fine. So if you remember the first airplane that was built by the Wright brothers, and the current jets we have, you would see a steady process of improvement. What they simply do is identify a problem by research, by experience. You go into an ideation session to brainstorm on how to solve that problem, and then they prototype solutions, and then they deploy it. It works, does not work. Sometimes it can be fatal. In the case of Boeing 737 Max, 787, 737, I don't know, Max, there's a factory error. I mean, you have that happening. Even the Wright brothers, when they first flew, there was factory errors. But again, the goal is I am trying to make this thing work better. And I think one of the problems we have as Africans is that we have not imbibed this culture. So when we say we don't have a maintenance culture, it's part of it. So we just put stuff out there, infrastructure out there, and then we don't observe, we don't monitor it, we don't continually work on it, we don't continually improve it, and then it goes bad. At the end of the day, we have to begin again. It's more expensive, it's time wasting. The impact on the negative impact on society is just terrible. That is why we can be saying, oh, for 60 years, we've not been able to fix power. I mean, yes, there's obviously the human catastrophe issue, politicians and corruption and all of that, but it's a culture. It's a culture that, and I'm stressing on this because this is what it is. Forget every other thing we are saying. It's about becoming intentional, right? I want to make this thing better. And I'm sure that if you think of your day, think of just the last 24 hours, there are things in your life, maybe it's your room or your parlor or the way you spoke to someone, or I know, just think about anything that you just think, this thing could have been better. Or if I had spoken to this person like this, it could have been better, right? That is design going on. It's about becoming conscious of that act, studying things and trying to make them better, right? So design thinking is about learning by doing and doing again. It is the confidence that new, better things and ways possible. I'll give you guys a personal story. I went to, who knows Demas Nwoko? Who? Nobody? Wow. Really?
I do.
Of course, you know him. Okay, so Demas was one of the foremost designers in Nigeria, very successful, and somebody I admire his work a lot. If you've been to Benin City, he did Cultural Center. If you've been to Ibadan, he did the Dominican Chapel and a lot of other buildings. And I went to meet him. He's very old. And what he told me at the end of our 2-day interaction was, Oga, go and start doing. A whole 48 hours of conversation and going deep and talking about materials, methods, history, background, and all that. At the end of the day, he simply said, look, after all said and done, you need to be doing. Yeah, if you translate that to the popular English phrase, it simply means practice makes perfect. So we need to keep doing. We don't deploy and then we think it's fine, it's all good, right? So what can you use design thinking for? Practically, this is professional now. There are tangible aspects, there are intangible. So when you make a process better, you're doing design thinking. When you plan a space, right, or an organization, you're doing design thinking. When you plan to develop a product, you're doing design thinking. When you're creating an experience, you're doing design thinking. I don't know, you guys want me to give you examples of this? Or should we just move on? I like a very interactive class. I'm sorry.
Give us examples.
You want examples?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start with the one at the back, right? So Coca-Cola sometime did a concert in Manhattan, right? This is creating an experience. And the theme of the concert was download a concert. So they got this big stage and got a very popular rock band and they were playing. And that stage was held up with ramps right up there. Nobody could see it, but you could see the download numbers reading. And messages were being sent online asking people to download the concert. So the more people downloaded, the stage was already programmed to be coming down, right? So people gathered there and were just downloading on their phones. That was an experience. And by the time they got to a given or an aspired number of downloads, the stage was on the ground with the rock band. That is a classical example of creating an experience, right? In product development, I don't know the age of the people here, but there's something called sawdust. Sawdust. Who has seen the sawdust cooker?
Yeah, way back.
Yeah?
When I was used it way back, I remember sawdust.
Way back, yeah. The sawdust cooker or the, you know that charcoal pressing iron.
Yeah, I remember that also.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Good. So those are products developed for a specific community, right? By the way, they were actually created by Prada in Enugu, right? I know of the sawdust. I'm not sure if the charcoal iron was created by Prada, but I know of the sawdust. And if you look at it, once you get the setup correctly, you're going to have a blue flame. I mean, I used it when I was growing up cooking a lot, right? So I know. You just put that sawdust thing, you put the one on top, you put the other one. And so that's a classical example of product development. Space planning. This is the one I'm very, very peculiar about. I ask questions like, why do we have 2-lane roads? Why is Lagos State government putting public parks or putting parks right in the middle of the expressways or highways and not in residential areas, right? The park is supposed to be used by people in residential areas, right? Are we together? Okay. Somebody just respond so that I know that I'm still on. Sorry, I do this to check that I'm still on, that I'm not just going and everybody has disconnected.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So if you know, there's a place called Murio Kunola Park in Lagos. That place, well, you can say it's not residential anymore. So I wonder why somebody would put a park there and nobody lives around it. I mean, it's not a residential area. So when you properly plan your spaces, right, your retail space, your recreation space, your community space. I mean, we build estates, what we call estates these days, and it's all concrete and sky. Nobody thinks of the important need of having for your health, for your well-being, for protection from direct ultraviolet rays from the sun, right? So you clearly see that a lot needs to be done. But when you see a properly planned space, even the way you interact with it, there are spaces that you go into and it conditions your movement, right? It's intentional. There's a space you go into, you don't drop litter on the floor because the space will make you not to. Nobody will tell you not to. But when you come into that space, you will know that you're not supposed to do this. There's a space you will go to, it will make you act in a certain way, right? It will elicit something in you and control you. That is space planning. That is space organization, right? Process planning. I'll use very example that will touch all of us. Who has been to a hospital before?
Me.
Of course,
all of us.
Good.
I think most of us at some point.
Okay. So think of, and when I say hospital, I don't mean private hospital, I mean general hospital, public healthcare. Think of the time it takes you from when you get your card to, okay, Mr. Babu Alau, you're raising your hand. So I hope I got the name. Please go ahead. Is it
Sorry,
there?
sir, it was erroneous.
Okay, that's fine. So if you think of when you went to General Hospital, from the time you got your card to when the doctor attended to you and you kind of felt you got service and left, who has had an unpleasant experience? Basically all of us. If it's not the front desk person that is telling you, write your name now, fill the form, card 300. Somebody comes into a hospital and the person can barely stand. And then the first thing you're telling the person is, card is 500 naira. Like, really? How about asking me, how are you? What are you doing? What brings you here? And then after you have answered, they can say, okay, you would need to see a doctor. So where I'm driving at is that entire process of getting into the hospital, getting the card and seeing a doctor can be redesigned. It can actually be shortened, right? If you think of the time it takes for one hospital to get your medical records, where possible, not basically possible in most places in Nigeria. Oh, I have to make a phone call. Let's call the other hospital. They would give us your records, and when we get your records, we then know what happens. I mean, this is for people that care, because in most Nigerian hospitals, what they will do is you simply start again, right? You lose time. A life can be lost because of that, and it just makes the whole process unpleasant, not effective, and clearly be up for improvement. So that is process planning. It also happens in organizations. How do you respond to a client? All those things are planned and codified. So if somebody reaches out to you and says, oh, you're Mr. XYZ, I would need you to help me design a building. What next? There's a process. You need to have created that process, and then it becomes what everybody that joins that organization as a staff goes through during the induction to learn. So the induction process you go through when you are employed in a place is actually for you to learn the organizational structure and the process of that organization. So that at the end of the day, that is what you met out to customers, right? So that thing, that intangible process is what process design is all about. Yeah. So I'll move to the next slide. So let's now take design thinking process. I think we've touched it throughout because I usually go back and forth. But however, please, this is not cast in stone. It can become a three-phased approach. It can be made into three. You can turn it upside down. It's just, however, it's linear. You go from one to another, right? So it can be 3 or it can be 5. So the first stage, and before I go into this, I would like to take any questions or contributions or clarifications. Let's just do 5 minutes. Questions, observations, contributions.
Hello, Chuma.
Can hear you.
Okay, my name is Mekam. I'm with Nzuko Labs. Thank you very much. I found the session so interesting thus far.
Good morning, sir.
I just want to make the point that, or rather make an inquiry to ask if there is a methodology, a systems approach to design thinking.
Yes.
One of the things I take away from what you've said so far, and you used the airplane as an example of how the aircraft that the Wright brothers developed is way different from what we fly in currently. So my question really is there a methodology, a kind of design thinking 101 framework that someone like myself can start to appreciate the fundamentals of this very important process? Thank you.
Thank you, Ikam. I'm actually looking forward to meeting you in person. Yes, there's a methodology, and that's what I'm about to go into. The standard is a 5-stage process. But there's also a version of 3 stages, which is like a coalition of these 5 steps. So yeah, that's what I'm about to take actually. There's a process, there's a method. We go from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, 5, and 6. And then it's actually a cycle. When you get to the end, it's a loop. So that's why it's a continuous activity. We keep doing it again and again. And again, like I'll stress it, a lot of us are already doing this in our lives. It's just about becoming conscious of it and then controlling it and deploying it when needed. So thank you for that question. I'll do justice to that. Any other observation, contribution, question? Okay, so in the absence of that, I'm just going to move on to the design thinking process itself. So the design thinking stage is a structured approach to generating and evolving ideas, right? It is a phased development process from identifying a problem to solving that problem. This process is what puts design thinking into action. So there are 5 of them. This is what I use, what I've created from all my studies. And I've kind of created this illustration that, the eye, let's see. So the first step is identifying a problem. The second is having an understanding of that problem. And the third is starting to create solution to that problem, the ideation process. And then the fourth one is applying or deploying that solution that you have created. And then the last one is identifying the sustainable outcomes. So what is it that is working and what is not working? Whatever is not working at stage 5 becomes number 1. Yeah? And then you take it round again. That is exactly how the Wright brothers have continually evolved the airplane. That is exactly how Apple has continually developed and improved their products. That is why you have software updates. It's this thing that they are doing. When it's deployed, right? When an application is developed and deployed, some things don't work. And those things are what is extracted, improved upon, and sent back to you as software updates. So it's a continuous process. So the first stage is problem identification. Questions that you ask yourself: how do we solve this problem? What is the challenge? Carry out your research, collate your inspiration, right? There are different ways of understanding the challenge. You can go in to experience it yourself. I read recently of a report by, I don't know if it's Amnesty International. A journalist who went to prison for 6 months. That is big, right? You want to do a documentary and unearth what is going on in Nigerian prisons. So you have to go to prison. That is empathy number 1. If you want to solve Nigeria's prison problems, then I think that's it. You don't need to go to jail for 6 months, but if you can do that, it's awesome. But there are other ways. That's just one way of doing it. In that, embedding yourself in the problem and starting to gain empathy, you're already doing research. You're identifying things, right? There's something usually called the 5 whys. I'll take it when we get to ideation, right? So this is basically the first stage of design thinking. This is what we should be doing every day of our lives. What is the problem? Just go around, look at your problems. Problem, not in the negative sense of the word, but what is not working or what can be made better, right? So that's the first stage of design thinking. The second stage is having a clear understanding. So what does your understanding reveal about the problem? This is where you start reframing, you start changing the solution, the questions, and start asking the right questions, right? So how can we stop traffic in Lagos? How can we empower our youths? How can we improve the doctor-patient experience, right? How can we improve student-teacher interaction, right? This is where you start telling stories. This is where you look for meanings, and this is where you frame opportunities. Please, you can interrupt me. I keep saying this. if you have any question, you can interrupt me and ask. Just unmute your mic and go for it, right? So this is the second stage of design thinking. In some other models, stage 1 and 2 is one stage. So it's just understanding the problem, identifying, understanding. You can just make it one stage. But this is stage 2. Stage 3 is the ideation process. So what solutions can we conceive? How can we generate ideas, and how do we refine them? And this is where you don't come with preconceived notions or ideas. It's always good to go there with a blank white sheet mind. So what can I think of? Here, one of the tools we normally deploy is to ask why. If you ask why 5 times, you get to something interesting. And I want us to do that experiment, right? I need somebody to give me a problem. Let's start from there. And I'm going to ask why, and somebody else is going to try to answer. And then when we are done, we'll review what we've just done. So please, can somebody just give me an example, a problem that they think can be solved? Please, quickly, anyone, just give us a problem.
Power issues.
Yeah, Tuchi, go ahead.
Yeah, power.
Sorry,
Power is a major problem.
Fire.
Power. NEPA, light, EEDC. Power.
Sorry, I think your sound is not good. I can't make out the meaning of what you're saying.
I'm saying power.
He said power. P-O-W-E-R.
Power, right. So electric power, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why is electric power a problem? Or why don't we have, so you have identified power as a problem, right? So I'm just going to take us back a bit. So the problem now is power, unavailability of power, right? So why is power not available? I need somebody else to give an answer.
For infrastructure.
Lack of infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay. So why is there lack of infrastructure?
Okay, let me jump in here. When power infrastructure was designed in Nigeria, it wasn't designed for the rural areas. 1. 2, it was designed for a certain population, not a certain number of people, okay? So what has happened is that the design, because don't forget, the people who gave us power are the colonial masters. And in much of what they did, in much of their own design thinking, it was to meet their own needs and not the needs of Nigerians.
Yeah.
So when they left the infrastructure that met their population in the country, so to speak. And then those that took over in designing future power projects never, factored in a new model, a new model for Nigeria. And then I'll make this other point about power because I have some exposure to this sector. The traditional design of power solutions has relied on high tension wires, thermal plants, and so on and so forth. But we know today that you can solve power problems by using hybrid solutions, small hydro, and of course, solar, and even wind. So the problem has to be very well interrogated. And for me, in trying to answer this question, why is it a problem? I go back not to look at the budget, but to look at how we got power, who gave us power, and where they provided that power.
Okay, so thanks a lot for that. You're 100% correct. So design thinking, right? Oftentimes, power is, if you apply design thinking to power, we are addressing what I call a social problem because it has to do with society. And social problems are very wicked, as they are referred to. Now, why are they wicked? They are wicked because they are multidimensional. They are multi-causative factors that there are multiple things at play, right? So when doing design thinking, first and foremost, you want to come, remember what I said, with a clean mind. I don't know anything about this, right? I just want to interrogate this. There are several ways, there are several pathways this power issue can go, but because power is a very big social problem, it will take a very long time to address all the issues. There are people issues, there are political issues, there are ethical issues, right? But for the purpose of this class, I just want to take us through a step of how ideation works. So if we were to go into a design thinking session on developing power, then clearly we are going to be asking a lot of questions. We are going to be going back to the beginning. That is the research phase and finding out what has happened. Well, I'm just doing a very quick, sharp exercise. Technospark, you want to do something? Technospark, sorry. Can you change your name to?
Hi, Chuma.
Hi.
Chuma, hi. So
Yeah.
in the process of design thinking, and if we use the example of power, which we're talking about right now, what do you do in a scenario where you have let's say a group of people and they have a problem, for example, power, and you say, let's ideate, and you start with you start the process where you start asking your 5 whys. But within the team, you have somebody who probably has some background of power, and the person more like clearly answered the question, and there are 4 people in the team. There's a possibility that the other people would say, well, person number 1 has, or person number 2, who probably has more experience, has given all the answers. So you've more like stopped my thinking process, and I like your answer. So let's go with yours. Is there a way how do you make it possible for other people to provide their answers without them being swamped or intimidated by the answer as somebody else has given, which we all think it's a good idea? I don't know if you get my point.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Clearly, that is why you need to suspend judgment. It's all about the facilitator, whoever it is that is coordinating that session. You need to ensure that you suspend judgment. You need to allow every idea, no matter how stupid or no matter how professional or informed that idea is, you need to allow all of them come to the table. We call it expansion, right? So at this point, you are expanding. You're taking in all possible ideas, all comments, and after this, then you now start sieving. You now start refining them and start pruning down. Some will be overlaps, just said in different ways, and then you start bringing them down together, and then you arrive at the problem. So going still on our 5 whys, right, which is still very valid. We've asked, you say there is no power. And why is there no power? Somebody said there's lack of infrastructure. Why is there no infrastructure? I'll explain our answers when we get to number 5. Why is there no infrastructure? Somebody else give us an answer. Why do you think there's no infrastructure for power in Nigeria?
All right. Good day, everyone.
Good day.
Okay. The answer to that, why I think that there's no infrastructure is because I think that there's no plan. Like there is no, in terms of, okay, let me look at in terms of power now. Like there is no like research carried out on a particular, maybe a location, on knowing how many the population of people who live in a particular place, then knowing the amount of power that is required to to sustain in that particular place. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's fine. So there's no right or wrong answers, right? This can actually, there's a possibility that this research has actually been carried out, but we don't know, right? So let's suspend our judgment. So why is there no plan? Can somebody else try to answer that? Why is there no plan or research in place to ascertain the need of a community before providing power? Somebody raised their hand, UJ, I think.
Yes, yes. So I was just going to speak on the other question you asked. I think the main problem that we're having, especially in the power sector, is that of not being able to project, like, not planning for the future, like population expansion, like, how the population continues to increase and then the urban centers continue to expand.
Yeah.
So you find out that the infrastructures that are already there, they are not able, to the capacity is so low to carry,
We're not meeting up.
the surge there. Yeah.
Okay, so why is this not happening? Why are we not projecting and planning? Why?
Okay. Are you asking me or
Yes, I'm
throwing
asking
it open to the house?
why.
Okay. Maybe the kind of leaders that we've had, they are not maybe they're not futuristic. They don't plan ahead. So maybe, for the lack of better term, I could say myopic in their view.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you have a leader who is considering, okay, the sustainability of this sector, what is going to happen in the next 50 years, in the next 100 years, and the person is able to plan in that line, then you could maybe see a difference. Yeah.
Okay. So
Thank
why
you.
do we have leaders that are not, are not initiative driven, are not forward thinkers, they're not planners? Why do we have those leaders?
Because because I think they are self-centered, they're just there to, I don't know, they're just there to serve themselves. They're not there for, like someone said, they are just, I don't know which word I'll use for them.
Okay.
They are more of,
that's fine. Let's go with self-centered for the purpose of this class. So we started out with there is no power in Nigeria, right? Or there is not adequate power in Nigeria. And then we ended up at some people are self-centered. Does anybody realize something now? Like I said, this can go in several directions. There are several answers that can come up for each question, for each why, right? So you see that if you want to solve the issue of power in Nigeria, you must address this number 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is self-centered leaders that are not taking initiative, bad governance, no plan or research in place, no projection, no forward thinking, lack of infrastructure, and then power. So if you go out and try to fix infrastructure without addressing the issue of leadership, you're wasting your time. That's where I'm driving at, because the issue of power is a social problem, and it's multidimensional. So this is a clear example of how design thinking works, right? You can only make impact, and that's why we call it social impact. Most times wicked problems are not solved. You just have to keep hitting it left, right, center, ebbing at it away until you get to a good place. I mean, even the developed countries in the world still have social problems. All they do is you keep making impact, you keep going through this process and just making it better and better and better. What I've just been able to show is that on the surface, what the problems are not actually what they are. There's a lot of underlying factors that are the result of that problem. And if you want to, or inform that problem, and if you want to solve that problem, you need to unearth all of them. Yeah. So that's basically what goes on during the ideation stage. And then you start thinking of, okay, how do I solve the issue of self-centered leaders? Should we advise people to get PVCs and get them out to vote and all of that? Should we recall the ones we've elected? Should we train the people working in the power sector so that they learn about best practices and they can start projecting and planning? Of course, the remuneration. If we replace power with police, you begin to imagine the kind of answers we are going to get, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was thinking about. Okay, so I was thinking. We are the leaders we have are actually people that they didn't come from space. They are all from here, right? So I was thinking, so if we use design as a way of programming somebody, so we program a baby to have empathy. We teach a baby to what do I call it? We teach a baby to define things. We teach a baby to ideate, right? So without teach that same baby to prototype, now you realize that we are not doing it as something external, but we are doing it internal, right? So I don't know if the same approach can be used in grooming children. So normalize, is that the word design children? Is that proper?
You're absolutely correct. I'll just add that it is in the doing. So you don't just say, you do, right? It is in the doing that things are learned. It is in the doing that ideologies are born. It is in the doing that you get to imbibe all those things, not just teaching. So design thinking is about doing. I don't know if I've made a point here. It's about doing. You need to get out and do. You need to form your cluster in your community and start doing. It is only when you start doing that you can start solving. Yeah. So that again, this is an introductory session, right? There's going to be the actual session where we take a problem and we start solving them, right? This will be very physical and live on ground in the Southeast. So when you've come up with your solutions, then you deploy. How do we put it out? Do we have the funds? Do we have the technologies to power it? Will it work, right? Is it working when we put it out? Is it working? You take your feedback, you make prototypes, and when you do all of this, this is the deployment phase. Again, you can actually merge the ideation and deployment phase for some people in some models. When you get your feedback and all of that, that is what you then take to separate and say, okay, this is working.
So please, can you go back to the last slide? I want to get something. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So how do we realize this idea, that this concept that we have created, how do we bring it to life, right? Is it going to be a physical product? Is it going to be a policy document? Is it going to be a recommendation? Is it going to be the creation of a new product? Is it going to be a digital solution? Is it going to be a furniture solution? Is it going to, so all of that is when you're prototyping, what form is it going to take? Is it going to be a presentation? Is it going to be a video or a movie? I know of a lot of work that is being done in Enugu in response.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
Please, can you have, can it be a hybrid, like when at the deployment stage? So can you have like physical product as well as a digital solution and stuff? Okay.
Yes, it can.
Thanks.
It can. I know of a group in Enugu, Center for Memories. I totally like what they're doing. I think that they are responding to the issue of loss of history, right? So the Igbo have a peculiar history that nobody wants to talk about, right? And here comes this group, and they are beginning to multimodal approach. So there are physical sessions for children, storytelling, more or less bringing back things like our Tales by Moonlight, which was part of our tradition. There is documentary, there is experience center being, that's multimodal, right? If I take that as an example, there are some things that they may have done that are not working. Those become part of the feedback that you get, and then you translate that to unsustainable outcomes. And those become problems. Those become problems that you take back to stage one and go over the process again, right? So you track and you take learnings, you move forward and you repeat the process again and again. So at this juncture, I would say when designing, a few things to note. You're a designer.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm still copying. Can you just go back?
Don't worry, you will get the slide.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll get the slide. You have your email. You registered with your email, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just email this to the class, to everybody that registered after the session.
Yeah, Chuma, quick one.
Okay.
Yeah. So you use CFM, Center for Memories, as an example, and you
Yes.
spoke about the fact that there was an issue of the lack of institutional memory vis-a-vis Igbo history and all that.
And this is my understanding from an observer perspective.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to write from that point to say that problem definition is very important. I think that in terms of listening to what you've shared and the comments that have been made, I think we also need to really interrogate problem definition.
Yeah.
Okay. So that when you identify a problem, you know how to when you identify a problem, you know how to define it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just flagging that as a very critical component of design thinking. So for me, I mean, I would say before I even start thinking about a design, I would want to identify a problem. And then having identified that problem, I would like to define it. And then from there, I begin to work forward. That's my point. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the contribution. You are absolutely correct. Let me just touch back on this. Once you identify a problem, that problem needs to then be framed into a question, right? We need to know what it is. It is said that people don't want hammers, they just want a nail on the wall. I'll leave us with that. Right? So points to note when you are designing, you need to be intentional, you need to be confident, you need to be strategic, you need to listen. Somebody made a comment about trying to force the client to choose the red color. I mean, what they've created. Creative people have a tendency to be very protective of their work. But what sets you apart as an outstanding designer is the ability to stand outside of your creation or your work and allow people to critique and improve it. So you need to listen and you need to be inspired. The inspiration comes from observing and immersing yourself into experiences and cultures. Design is an opportunity. Simply just take it. It comes with a lot of responsibility, right? You need to leave your comfort zone. You cannot do design from where you're comfortable because once you're comfortable, there's no problem. You need to get out of your comfort zone and get into problem zones. And then you begin to experience those problems. So you need to break your routines. You need to look for inspiration in everywhere and anywhere. You need to live in the world of the user. And most importantly, you need to get to learn how to work with other people, right? You need to have a beginner's mindset always, all the time, because you're always starting from the beginning. It's always a beginner's mindset. You need to approach every problem like you don't know anything about it. You may know all the background to an issue, you are an expert, but when you come into a design thinking session, please drop all of those and just approach it from, okay, so what is the problem? Because you're working with people that have all experienced this elephant. So for them, some of them it's a wall, some of them it's a sound, some of them it's a sharp edge. You need to be able to navigate all of those differences and then come up with something that works for everyone. So that you need to have a beginner's mindset. It's very okay to make mistakes. It's very okay not to know. And then you need to always see every problem as an opportunity. Don't think of what if, rather what's going on. Right?
Okay.
Hello? Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there was a question, I think by FN on the group about if there is a problem that you can't understand. I don't know if you could address the question, but I don't think you addressed it.
Okay, we'll take questions from the chat room once I'm done. I think this is almost the end of it. So yes, have that problems and opportunities. So we are going to start solving problems. We are working with, we've been given a very huge responsibility to reimagine our spaces, right? The Society of People Professionals handed this, or rather thinks we can do this, and we are going to start doing it very soon. Just as a preparation to that, I would like us, people that have attended this session, to just look around your space within your city. Think of, identify clusters. It could be a retail space, it could be It could be a park, it could be a road junction, it could be a market, it could be a school. Just think of the spaces around in your city and try to identify what is working and what is not working, right? And start in your head, start sketching ideas of how we can make it better. We are going to meet again to work on this. Yeah. So yeah, thanks. And let's begin to design. So I'll just go to the questions in the chat room and see if I can answer them. Benita, are you there?
Yes, I am.
So I can stop sharing my screen, right?
Yeah, you can. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the question.
So what are the questions that we have? Whoa.
Okay.
Lots going on here. TV in the living room. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to try to.
There's
I don't think
from Sunday SCN. It says, is it possible to identify the problem and not understand it?
Yes, it's possible to identify the problem and not understand it, and that would happen when you've not interrogated the problem. The moment you start bringing out the parts, you would get the picture of the whole. So if you know that this is a problem, the next step is, why is it a problem? That's what Mr. Nikam was saying, framing the problem. It's very important that you understand what the problem is and go ahead to start the process of solving it. So yes, it's if you don't try to interrogate the problem, you won't understand it. You just have to do, right? Is there any other question? Maybe the people will give.
Okay, I don't think there's any other questions, but please, if you have any question, you can raise your hand. I think UJ is raising.
Okay, so UJ, go ahead.
No, sorry, that was earlier.
Okay.
Right, so you need to bring your hand up. This hand must be paining you by now. Okay. Do we have any other question, comments? Yeah, we want to introduce ourselves. I mean, this is the end of the session, I know, but it will still be nice to see your faces. I see a couple of names I know, and a whole lot that I don't know. So, in the absence of
Christian's hand is up.
Okay, Mr. Christian, go ahead, please.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, my question is in reaction to the process that you just outlined. Yeah. Okay, let's take for example, you talked about space, you know, where we live, and I believe that the way people live in those spaces, okay,
yeah,
how they interact in those spaces affects their lives and as well affects the space. Okay, to clarify what I'm saying, let's take poverty for example. Okay, poor people are usually found in an area that we may describe as slum. Okay, and you find out that the space where they live has a way of affecting their lives. Okay, and if there is a way they can move away from that space, okay, and experience a better space, okay, you find out it affects their thinking process and how they view life generally. Okay, so what I'm trying to ask is, how do you define the interaction between the way people live their lives and the space where they live?
Okay. Very interesting one. I will try to attempt to answer it and hope I get it. So when we talk about design, right, and making things better, it's not always an entire paradigm shift or moving from one entire space of being or existence into another, right? It's about using what is within your grasp. So is it something that is technologically possible based on what you have, right? Is it economically viable? Um, and can you afford it? So you will always need to, I don't, if you remember the slide 3 or so, I did touch on the things that design does, right? Those 3 ingredients have to be in place. So in the case of this guy let me use Ajegunle in Lagos as an example, or use Co-Camp in Enugu. Unfortunately, Co-Camp or trying to get a poor neighborhood. Let me use Co-Camp because it seems a bit abandoned. That used to be more or less an upscale hood that's now dropped. What the person in Co-Camp should be doing on Ajegunle is not necessarily try to live there to go to Independence Layout or Ikoyi, but rather make the best of what they can in Co-Camp with the resources they have. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, Mr. Christian. Right?
Yes, I'm getting you.
Yeah, you always have to work with the tools and possibilities available to you. It is over time when everybody starts doing this that the entire society improves. So if everybody in Ajegunle, for instance, decides that the front of my house is going to be swept, right? What you're going to have at the end of the day is that you're going to have a clean neighborhood. Yeah?
Okay.
That's how it works. So it's about everybody having a mindset or now learning to live in a certain way, right? If you look at the way Alaba, Computer Village, Main Market, Onisha, Aba Market, there's something similar, even though they're in different cities. There's something similar about these places I've just mentioned. You agree with me? Right?
Okay.
Good. That thing that is similar is because the people that inhabit these cities have a mindset and a culture. Now, if you want to transform those spaces, you would need to transform their mindset. The moment you transform their mindset, something happens to the space, right? So they will start doing something different. Let me try and paint a clearer picture. And I'm going to use Nigerian police. Please, if there's any Nigerian police officer that is here, I'm sorry. This is not to put you on the spot. And please don't come and arrest me. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Before NSAS protest, right, it was okay for police people to somehow we've kind of accepted the fact that it's okay for police people to tell you, I'm going to shoot you and nothing will happen. Or for us to have numerous checkpoints and them just collecting money. Or for them to feel very invisible and like nothing is going to happen to me. They just go on with the operation. Call that impunity. Something has happened. A mindset has been changed by the protest. So everybody now has a new mindset. So it's a lot more difficult now. So what you have seen is you can say that the police people have refused to go back to their duty post. It's more than that. The truth is that they are still trying to reconcile the new normal, right? How do I go back and stand at this junction, knowing fully well that I may be attacked? Somebody's going to ask me a question. If I try to arrest anybody and start dragging them and beating them, there's a possibility that people are going to rise up and ask you, sir, what did that guy or lady do, right? So there's been a paradigm shift. A mindset has been born. And this is exactly what applies to design thinking. Once you can get a community or a people to know or to come to terms and imbibe this culture that, look, this thing cannot be like this. It should always be like this. It should always be better. We should always make things better. then we are on your way to Canaan land, the promised land. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. So another question from my end. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm thinking of, okay, when you have a problem you want to solve, right? You want to start a design process. So how do you constitute your team? How do you constitute your team for each of the stages? I know you've mentioned severally about you've mentioned the need to involve all stakeholders, right? So, but I'm wondering at what point, do you involve them? Is it just is it at the point of ideation process or problem definition, or like, I just want you to throw more light on how you can how to constitute a team at different stages of the design. Thank you.
Okay. So you need to have everybody from stage one, from the get-go, from identifying the problem. Everybody needs to be involved. What you need are people that can manage the process of design thinking. So people like you, people like me, people that understand the process. Remember, everybody does design thinking, but some people are conscious and are aware of it. So they are the ones that will then facilitate or control or guide the process. So you just need one or two persons that understand this process, and their function, their job is not to dictate, right? It's just to ensure that I keep everybody within the framework, right? Just to guide, to facilitate. That's how it works. So in answer to your question, you just need a design thinker that is aware of design thinking to facilitate.
Okay.
That will be at the center of the process. Depending on the size of your class or your session, we want to have 2 or 3 persons, and their role, their function is to clearly guide and just allow people express themselves in that process. Yeah?
Okay, interesting. Wouldn't that be cumbersome?
Not really. So design thinking sessions can go from 30 minutes to several months. It just depends. It depends on the issue. Yeah, there's no duration to it. You can do it in 30 minutes off the fly.
Okay.
Or you can, when you're doing something with government, for instance, it can take months. It can go into years, right? You just keep stage by stage and start putting that out as you go, right? You can actually do design thinking with an entire community. They are open. We run open innovation labs, and this is really where you just throw it. Using digital tools, throw it open to the entire community, and you are taking everybody along. We just completed a 3 months design cycle, innovation cycle on improving public health infrastructure in Nigeria, or experience rather. And that was a 3 months project. So we spent an entire 1 month doing research and collating, visiting hospitals, doing interviews, documenting and all of that. And then over the next 1 month, we had ideation sessions, came up with a problem, and over the next 1 month, we collated all of that and put out a solution in the form of a policy document, a product that we created. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Chuma. So just to add to what you said, I think one of the challenges that we have from a design thinking point of view as a people or as a nation is, and I mentioned it in the chat column, is we've always been taught to copy, and we've not been taught to question or probe, why is this house always built this way, right? Or why
11, not to 12. I said you should go and pray. How can you break the fast? I told you that you should not break. I said you should go and pray your personal.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Thanks. So, and because we've been taught to copy, it's a challenge for us to, think individually or think as a group. And I think, it depends on the size of to answer or to throw more light to or to ask to the answer you put into the last person's question. It depends on the size of the problem, right? If you have a big problem, you can get a community, you can get a team of people to sit down, to ideate and think through, if this possible solution is going to work or not. But if it's an individual problem, you'd also see that in developed communities, probably in Europe and America, they begin to teach children from maybe age 2 or less, using STEM tools, which kind of has a way of making you think, making you ask questions, making you probe, your environment, right? You see a child who tells you, you see in Africa, we mostly ask children, what do you want to be, right? And they answer you, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a pilot, I want to be a lawyer. Those are the three things they do. But in developed countries, people ask, what problem do you want to solve? Because they expect you to see something in your environment and ask, so why is the tap that way? Why can't the tap be the other way? And, you think about it. And sometimes, even as parents, when we train our kids, your kids come inquisitively and they ask you a question. And the initial thing we want to do is to give them the answer already. But, design or STEM has taught us to say, what do you think about it, right? You throw the question back to the child and allow the child to probe and find a solution to the problem. So, and I think it's a good idea, that this is coming on the scene, working with Nzuko Labs, working with Umbarino to be able to bring, that mind share to people to see how we can begin to change how we look at problems and how we look at our environment, and hopefully in a couple of years we'll begin to see the changes if we apply this process to social problems that are all around us. Thanks.
Okay, so I was going Kem runs Nzuko Labs, and I would really want to thank him for the opportunity for us to collaborate and get this off the ground. I was going to give him, I don't know if he has any parting words for us in the absence of any question. I think he has done that already, but yes, I'm still going to pass it on to him. And Ken, please, you already have operations in many, and you're more.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks, Chuma. Yeah, it's been a very interesting session so far. I've learned a lot, and I guess everybody who has joined as well has learned. And I want to say thank you to everybody who has found time out of their weekend to join this webinar. I guess you probably have some other important thing to do, but you're here with us today. And I also hope that this session has brought a different spin to your knowledge about design, as well as a connection for you to see how life and development circles around design and the principles of engineering, art, science, technology, mathematics, which is basically what we continually want to promote in the southeastern part of Nigeria and generally around the country. So for those who are not based in the southeast who are in this forum, we don't in any way mean to exclude you. We're also very inclusive. So as a follow-up, this session would be shared to everybody in your emails, being recorded. So you'd have all the slides, you have the voice notes as well. It will be shared to your email. If you don't get it, maybe in the next 2-3 days thereabout, please shoot us an email. I saw Benita put the email somewhere in the chat box. Shoot us an email and we would send it across to you. We can also engage with you through our social media handles. If you have questions, if you have ideas, or if you have clarifications, we are all about partnerships and collaboration. Finally, we're going to be in the Southeast in a couple of weeks. And basically what we'll be doing is we'll be calling for registration for an innovation cycle for an initiative called Obodoma. So Obodoma, for those people who are not Igbo, means a beautiful city or a future city. And it's an initiative by the Society of Igbo Professionals and we're basically working with them to see how we can bring it to life. What we want to do in that session is to be able to, obviously it's going to be a physical session where we'll select a number of people who would basically morph into teams, and they basically show us the idea of how they want to reimagine their environment or their city. Like Chuma talked about, you want to reimagine what Aba market would be like, or the Aba city would be like. I think it was sometime last year, Aba ranked the 30th city in the world or something. So, if you're on a team and you're told to imagine it based on, the principles Chuma has, shared with us today, what is that going to be like, right? And once you imagine it, we have people who are going to guide you, and you're able to present it, to a wider, to a wider audience, so that, we kind of see how our cities get better. So that's basically what we'll do when we come into the East. But for now, I think we'll close the session formally and give you back time to enjoy your weekend. But also, again, want to reiterate and say thank you for your time joining us. And thank you to Chuma and his team for giving us this great insights around design thinking. Thank you very much.